They checked their documents, and they had moved up about the same amount as aggregate and triumvirate, if not slightly less, so they had to hurry. They saw another high amount of power, which was a library. They absorbed the entire thing, giving them knowledge, but it didn't make them much more powerful. However, there was one lone book still floating in the void. They touched it, and it told them that without a population of productive citizens, a democracy will collapse. Citizenship is the state of being a member of a community. Being a citizen comes with rights and responsibilities. There are legal citizens, who are formally recognized as citizens, but in some situations, all residents are viewed as citizens. An effective citizen in a democratic society should be one of three types of citizens who engage with their community and improve it: a personally responsible citizen, participatory citizen, or justice-oriented citizen. Through having populations of these citizens, democratic societies can flourish. First of all, one significant type of citizen who is beneficial to a democratic civilization is the personally responsible citizen. A personally responsible citizen is a citizen who fulfills all that is expected of them in their community. An example is within Document A, with the citizens of Conewago Valley. They all took their part to help their community by donating food items during a food drive. Most personally responsible citizens will regularly vote and earnestly pay their taxes in order to uphold their duties. Through these measures, personally responsible citizens do the minimum to maintain a prosperous democratic society. Additionally, participatory citizens are necessary to the integrity of democratic communities. Being a participatory citizen equates to actively engaging and volunteering in a society, as well as assembling events for the refinement of their community. For instance, in Document B, a woman named Sue Brady has her life as a participatory citizen explained. She spent 22 years volunteering as the director of a non-profit organization dedicated to housing. Participatory citizens often put together helpful events such as food drives instead of just taking part in them. As a result, they go out of their way to better their democratic society through solving problems. A final type of citizens who improve democratic communities are justice-oriented citizens. To be a justice-oriented citizen is to identify problems and work to resolve them at their sources. One example is found in Document C, when a man named Cesar Chavez began a hunger strike in protest of unfair wages. He went as far as to rally farm workers, especially migrants, into a union, where they cooperated to advocate for farm workers. Justice-oriented citizens will effectively make substantial changes when necessary. Through putting in this extra effort, justice-oriented citizens can vastly refine democratic societies. In closing, there are three major types of citizens who are productive and effective in democratic societies. There are personally responsible citizens, participatory citizens, and justice-oriented citizens, who are all vital for preserving democratic communities. Personally responsible citizens meet and complete all that is expected of them. Participatory citizens formulate advantageous events for their societies, and justice-oriented citizens go above and beyond for their community, making these three types of citizens ideal for democratic communities. This knowledge was so radical it made them much more powerful. They absorbed the now worthless book, and then saw Weird Al joined them, and they got back in Ni. They went sailing in Ni for a long time but weren't finding anything. However, they gave consciousness to Ni's systems, and it then made a choice to go to a specific universe far away. It took them there, and it was the Sophoversal technological headquarters. The 8th Legion applied for an upgrade to Ni, but the workers didn't agree. The 8th Legion then showed them a picture of them chilling with Thuots, and after they confirmed it to be real, they agreed to upgrade Ni as much as possible, and wouldn't charge anything for it. They did this, and Ni became the highly incredibly grand Hukti, or Thai for short. They tested out Thai, which was highly sophisticated and much more powerful than Ni. It came with a way to give all of its power to one individual, while keeping its original power level. Servi did this, becoming much more powerful. They used the same power searching that Ni had, but Thai had a much higher range, so they found somewhere immediately. It was a wandering warrior named who called himself the Alfredo Administrator, Barbecue Boss, Chili Chief, Dijon Domini, Incurtido Exec, Frites Sauce Foreman, Guacamole Governor, Hummus Honcho, Inamona Informer, Jam Judge, Ketchup Khan, Liver Lord, Mustard Master, Nacho Neoteric, Olive Overseer, Pico Prince, Kizah Queen, Relish Ruler, Salsa Sultan, Tartar Tyrant, Urfa Unchangeable, Vinegar Vanguard, Worcester Wayfinder, Xylitol Xenagogue, Yuja Yokozuna, Zakisksa Zenith, and above all else, Condiment King. They asked if he wanted to join, but he said they would have to fight him first. He shot a massive blast of ketchup at the 8th Legion, minorly inconveniencing them, and then they killed him by accident. And you know what else is massive? The low taper fade mim. They were confused why he was giving off so much power, and they resurrected him. He explained he was a regular dude who wanted to be a supervillain, but wasn't he actually evil. However, while he was going through his phase, he made a deal with an actually evil spirit. This deal was that he would gain control over anything of his choice while the villain could reside inside of him. He could have asked for control over something useful like time, matter, probability, or reality itself, but really wanted to choose condiments, so that's what he went with. He joined the 8th Legion, and the evil spirit emerged from his eyes. The spirit turned out to be that one guy, you know, that guy from the movie where that one thing happened. That one guy then started to battle the 8th Legion, including the Condiment King. That one guy opened with a burst of tentacles from his chest, wrapping up members of the 8th Legion. Thanks to their advantage in numbers, some were able to hit that one guy while he was still wrapping them up, weakening him enough for them to squirm out, and all start attacking him. He sent out a shockwave, knocking everyone else, and engulfed himself in a pillar of rapidly spinning fire. This beam shot out beams of fire at all the members, and some got hit. Some others got close enough to the pillar to absorb it, making that one guy fall out. After hitting that one guy some more, he got up and started to fight them hand to hand, being surprisingly skilled. Through his decent level of skill and superior raw power, he managed to turn the tides of the battle, and was on track to win. However, the members of the 8th Legion then had an epiphany, and figured out how to do Shaq Fu. By using Shaq Fu, they beat that one guy back, nearly killing him. That one guy flew up into the air, and when the members swarmed around him, he unleashed all his energy in one blast, disintegrating himself, but putting the members in danger. In the near instantaneous moment they had to react, Weird Al break-danced so funkily that the blast was deflected. They went to the ashes of that one guy, and realized that this was not his first time doing deals with others, and the souls and powers of many other hosts were trapped, all around as powerful as members of the 8th Legion. They poked the ashes, and then Gandalf the Grey and Gandalf the White and Monty Python and the Holy Grail's Black Knight and Benito Mussolini and the Blue Meanie and Cowboy Curtis and Jambi the Genie Robocop, the Terminator, Captain Kirk and Darth Vader Lopan, Superman, every single Power Ranger Bill S. Preston and Theodore Logan Spock, The Rock, Doc Ock and Hulk Hogan, all came out of the ashes, each joining the 8th Legion. They all got in Thai, and saw a new area nearby. It didn't show before since it was far more powerful than the 8th Legion, but with the new members, the 8th Legion matched a third of the raw power, enough for it to show up on the radar. In the area, they didn't see what they were expecting. It seemed to be an abnormal void between universes. They tried going in, but there was a force field. When they tried teleporting inside, it didn't work, and an alarm was set off. Suddenly, every member of the 8th Legion had their power taken away, and the force field became visible. They were sucked inside, and saw a desk with 2 chairs, and a Thuot's logo. Without any other options, they sat down, and watched a Thuot's employee, not one of the main hyper-powerful members, but still someone fairly high-ranking, spawn in the other chair. He told them that this was an interrogation, and the 8th Legion told him about their history with the main Thuot's members. He was skeptical, but brought in one of the extremely powerful members. This member told them that the alarm was set off because it detected the high amount of power across all the 8th Legion members. He then said that this was an experiment designed to trap a powerful enough subject to conduct testing on the subversal transmogrifier. They didn't know what the flying flapjack a subversal transmogrifier was, but the members showed it to them. It was a device about the size of a laptop and as thick as a novella, with an interface full of complicated controls, buttons, gauges, meters, screens, colors, lights, coordinates, switches, charts, settings, and devices. There was practically no empty space left from the sheer complexity. This was intimidating, and just as Servi was about to start messing around with the controls, the Thuot's member smacked him so hard his soul disintegrated, but the Thuot's member repaired it. The Thuot's member said even tiny alterations on the keys of this device could drastically change the entire subverse. The only thing that Thuot's wanted to test with Thuot's would be a setting called personal ubiquity, which was front and center. He explained that this is default to 1, and is the only tool which seems to be connected to singular people, since everybody has their own value for this setting that only they can change. Whenever somebody comes into contact with the device, it switches from the value of the last person to contact it, to that person. What the setting does is cause a person's very being to exist wholly and simultaneously across multiple copies of this being, something that can't be done with magic even as strong as that of Thuot's. The default value for every person is 1, and the number corresponds to the number of beings a person exists in. He mentioned that as reward for this experiment would be a hefty amount of power, although he wished it was anyone other than Sergei. He did say that for this to work, the 8 Legion would have to merge into one being, so they did, and called themselves Octad Pod. Their first task was to set their personal ubiquity to 0, and as the Thuot's member was explaining further, they went ahead and set it to 0. They found themselves drained of magic and with no items, not even the subversal transmogrifier. They were in a cube-shaped room, with 3 walls, a floor, and a ceiling made out of a dark cobblestone. The area was dimly lit, with the only light source being from the other wall. This wall was the same as the other 3, but it had a rusty, metal door, and a stone tablet hanging above the door with the phrase "Some things are meant to be forgotten" engraved on it and dimly glowing. They tried breaking through the walls, but nothing happened. The door was locked, and also indestructible. It then began to set in that they were trapped here, and they didn't know what to do. After a few hours, they noticed they hadn't gotten any more tired, hungry, or thirsty. They got bored quickly, and did nothing but talk amongst themselves and read the engraving over and over. Eventually, they came to decide to try and follow what the engraving said by trying to clear their minds completely of guilt and regret. For the next few days, they tried and failed to meditate, until eventually, they got into a sort of flow, meditating successfully for another week straight. They somehow managed to finally clear their minds, and could feel when it happened. This feeling jolted them back into their normal state of mind, and they tried opening the door again. They twisted the doorknob, and peeked behind the door, seeing a blinding light. They noticed the engraving was missing, and they opened the door fully and walked in. As soon as they walked in, they were back in the same exact position with the subversal transmogrifier they were in before, and listening to the same instructions from the Thuots member, the only thing being changed that the personal ubiquity was set back to 1. The Thuots member seemed to notice what they had just done, and looked shocked. He told them that they were just sent to the Uber room. This was a place where no time passed, even to entities as powerful as Thuots, which required those who enter to do what Octopod did, forget all regret, trauma, and guilt. Thuots estimated that only 5% of the people who entered came out, and the rest died of old age or from falling and hitting their head. The member also mentioned that of those who came back, all claimed that they took several decades, or even centuries or millennia, to come back. Octopod told the Thuots member that he spent only around 2 weeks to get out, and the member was amazed. He said that with that level of mental fortitude, Octopod may have potential to become as strong as members of Thuots. This reminded Octopod that he was promised a hefty amount of power, so he asked the Thuots member about this. The Thuots member told him that there was another task regarding the personal ubiquity setting, albeit very different. This time, Octopod would set his personal ubiquity to infinity, and would be transported to an area known as vergessen. This was another zone similar to the Uber room, and was a vast area with different circular regions, each region getting both larger and less uniform as they progressed. Unlike the Uber room, time progressed here the same as the subverse. The first region was the desert, with an area of 20 million square kilometers, a landscape of virtually identical sand dunes and formations with a pink sky. The notable part of the desert was in the very center of the desert, and by extension, very center of the area. This was a massive pillar which stretched infinitely into the sky, with an exterior that looked like the sky of Earth, and a door on the bottom. And you know what else is massive? The low taper fade mem. Inside the pillar is the sanctum of the forgotten. The walls of the pillar are unbreakable from the outside, but from the inside they are gone, and plains and forests stretch out infinitely, though there is an invisible wall where the walls would have been. From the inside, the door is much more similar to one on Earth, being a large gateway that looks out onto the dunes of the desert. Inside, though, lies the immense and extremely dense city known as the Sanctum of the Forgotten. The sanctum has some parts similar to human architecture, with others being otherworldly, and some not comprehensible. This is because the residents of the city come from all across the multiverse, with many following completely different laws of physics and coming from incomprehensible realities. Many of these beings had magical powers, but had these powers taken away when they entered the level. Every citizen of the sanctum reports that they entered through use of the subversal transmogrifier or were born into the sanctum. The sanctum's history goes back further than centillions of years, so countless generations of residents have been born and died in the sanctum, with new residents still coming in through use of the subversal transmogrifier. If one goes beyond the desert, there is the rolling hills, with an area of 700 million square kilometers, icy mountains, with an area of 100 billion square kilometers, the ocean, with an area of 500 trillion square kilometers, the forest, with an area of 200 quadrillion square kilometers, and finally, the void, with an area of 999 septillion square kilometers. The void is surrounded by 4 walls, but no ceiling or floor, of a barrier. Touching this barrier brings one back to reality, similarly to the one that was in Chazcam Zero's place. Each area had a lower population than the last, and with these populations being spread out over increasingly large areas, it would be harder to find more people the further you got from the sanctum, with the exception of the desert being virtually uninhabited. Of those who attempted the journey to the edge, 90% gave up, 9% perished, and only 1% made it out. This meant that there was technically a 91% survival rate, yet only a 1% chance of ever leaving. Octodpod took the chances, and set his personal ubiquity to infinity, finding himself in the desert and looking at the sanctum, which he walked towards. After a few minutes, Octodpod got to the sanctum. He went inside the pillar, and walked into a bustling city with several layers, going on for hundreds of miles in all directions, including up, down, and in fourth, fifth, sixth, eighth dimensions. He walked through a barely visible wall of red beams, and it gave him a message that he was not recognized and must go to the city hall. He did this, and told Mr. Washi Washi, who was at a desk, what happened. After filling out some thingies, they were registered as members. He then told him about the Universal Transmogrifier, but since that was the only way in, it was obviously common knowledge. He then mentioned that he was sent here specifically by a Thuot's member, but Mr. Washi Washi didn't believe him. He made him do a lie detector test, which came out as true, and since Octodpod at least appeared to be in a stable mental state, Mr. Washi Washi listened in. After telling Mr. Washi Washi everything, Mr. Washi Washi had it all published in newspapers, and went alongside Octodpod to help him reach the edge, forming the 9th Legion. Octodpod asked Mr. Washi Washi about the sanctum, and learned that Mr. Washi Washi was the person in the sanctum who had been there the longest. He asked if there was anyone else who should join the 9th Legion, and Mr. Washi Washi went off to ask other high-ranking government officials if they wanted to join. After a few hours, Fred Trump, the father of Donald Trump, Conor McGregor but with Harry Potter's wand, Ringo Starr, Bully Maguire, the evil Ringo Starr, Curious George's stepsister, the tongue from the Rolling Stones logo, the secret lying bully of the 12 doubloons of LeBron, Fred Jones and Big Chungus agreed to join. They all had high-ranking positions in the government, extreme amounts of power, or both. They agreed to this because they could make it to the edge, get some cool stuff from the Universe, and use the Universal Transmogrifier to bring that stuff back.